He faces 175 years. It's a death sentence. This abomination is the crime of the century. We, very early in the 21st century, are revealing a crime of this century. And it is hard to imagine a greater crime will be perpetrated in this century. But if they get away with his persecution, and if they manage to silence all true investigative journalism in the world, then I guess it won't be the crime of the century. It will just be the beginning of the end of freedom as we know it.
So hello everyone, we meet here every Friday from 5 p.m. until 7 p.m. We are one of the few groups that actually has an ongoing campaign for Julian Assange's freedom. Every Friday until Julian Assange is free. You may have heard that recently Magistrate Barreza decreed that Assange would not be extradited to the US. The US wants Assange on 18 charges. The majority of them are for espionage. This is the very first time that a publisher and a journalist has been charged with espionage for publishing information in the public interest. Magistrate Barreza has decided that Julian Assange must not be extradited to the US simply on medical grounds. She has not agreed that Julian Assange is innocent of the charges of espionage, or that journalists should be protected and that any publication in the public interest should be protected. She has not protected the right to freedom of expression. She has not protected the right of any journalist to keep us citizens informed of what our governments are doing. At the moment, that action is on an appeal basis. So Magistrate Barreza has decided to maintain Julian Assange in prison, in a high security prison, simply to give the Americans the right to lodge an appeal. In the words of the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, Professor Niels Melzer, acclaimed Australian publisher Julian Assange has faced for the last 10 years a made-up allegation and fabricated evidence in Sweden. Pressure from the UK not to drop the case in Sweden, a biased judge, detention in a maximum security prison, psychological torture, the violation of his status as an international asylee, and the risk of being extradited to the US, where he could face 175 years in prison for exposing war crimes. For 9 years, as a favor to the US, Swedish prosecutors maintained a preliminary investigation for matters without any charges ever having been filed. I will repeat, 9 years of preliminary investigations which enabled the Swedish to request Assange to be extradited from the UK without ever, during those 9 years, laying any charges against Julian Assange. Assange was in effect in limbo, without a chance to defend himself. He reported to the Swedish authorities on several occasions. He wanted to respond to the accusations, but the authorities stonewalled. He knew, and we believe the Australian government also knew, that a grand jury had been assembled in the US, and they were seeking to extradite him to the US for those charges of espionage. The reason for them is that Assange revealed horrendous crimes committed overseas by US troops. This abuse of the legal system by those intent on punishing Assange is abhorrent and should not be permitted by any government. Prosecuting an innocent person ad infinitum, forever, non-stop, is a severe abuse of the rule of law. The US has demanded all its allies to inundate Assange with criminal cases. The evidence is very strong about this. For example, Stratfor, a security consultancy that works for the US government, advised American officials to deluge Assange with all kinds of criminal cases for the next 25 years. This is lawfare, warfare against innocent citizens. You keep on prosecuting them, you keep them in jail, they are innocent, they cannot escape. That is exactly what has happened with Assange, with the complicity of our government. It is obvious that we are dealing here with a political persecution. Holding Assange long enough for the US to prepare their espionage maximum security prison case and to give the US a chance to extradite him is an abuse of process, is an abuse of the law. Magistrate Pareza has ruled against the extradition, but the US is appealing. That is where we are now. Our government, led by Prime Minister Morrison, has shamefully stuck its head in the sand as an ostrich and decided to do nothing to secure Assange's release. Morrison is part of Western leaders who obey Washington's demands. He has been rewarded by the Trump administration and the US for his services. This persecution and law warfare can happen to any journalist or human rights worker or person concerned with international affairs or human rights. If our reports of abuse are embarrassing to our governments, we can be prosecuted and put in a jail to rot. Prime Minister Morrison, be courageous, show some integrity, pick up the phone and end this travesty. Secure the release of Julian Assange. Stop this vendetta.
Free the truth.
Free Assange.
Free the truth.
Free Assange.
Free.
Free Assange.
You can come and join us. We're here every Friday at 5 o'clock. You can write to your local MP.
I just wanted to say, when I was a girl, my grandfather, I heard stories about how my grandfather came from Scotland because they were starving over there. And he had 7 kids, and my dad was one of those kids. And they weren't wealthy. I remember stories of how they could only wear shoes to school, Free Assange, or to the church. And apart from that, they weren't to play in their shoes or muck around in their shoes because they had to keep them for going out. So they weren't rich people, but then my dad had a family and they had a better life. So I'm here because I want to see that all the kids in future generations have a better life. And I was told that Australia's an egalitarian society. We look after people. When I grew up, that's what I was told. And I was told that everyone is equal. And the old adage of have a go and look after each other. So we need to look after Julian Assange, an Australian who's put his life on the line, has been tortured, so that we can know what's going on in the world. We can know about the crimes, the war crimes, and the way our government acts. And we want to make sure that this truth is allowed to keep getting out there. And unless we look after Julian, we won't know what's going on, because there'll be no journalism to speak of, only mouthpieces for what the government wants to say. So everyone, stand up, fight for Julian, write and call your local politicians, because we need to free Julian Assange.
A petition by Philip Adams. It's now reached 570,000 signatures. Those signatures have gone to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. We are now seeking to have these perpetrators of war crimes face the music at The Hague. This will be the ultimate test of the International Criminal Court. Firstly, is it a pure organisation or has it been corrupted? And secondly, does it have the power to do these things? We will wait with bated breath, but meanwhile that petition has 570, over 500,000 signatures. And it is the largest petition in the history of the ICC. This is a big event and it is a huge test. We will know after this test whether this tiger is a tiger on our side and whether it has teeth. Let's pray that it does. Let's pray that it brings justice to the world, to Julian Assange and to all of you out there. Thank you.
This is our 60th weekly Sydney Town Hall gathering of people who are here to truthfully inform everyone about the unlawful and cruel persecution of the multi-award-winning Australian journalist Julian Assange. Our media and most of our politicians have failed us. If we had a free press, the truth about Julian's persecution would have featured as the top news headline every day until there was so much public outrage that he would be free and in good health. Decent people are shocked when they learn how shamefully our media have behaved in reporting the facts about Julian Assange. We must all realise that the inhumane torture of Julian Assange is nothing less than an attempt to maintain a corrupt system which could never survive if people knew and understood the truth. Julian Assange is a hero of free speech, democracy and peace. The common decency of everyday people must triumph over our corrupt system if we are going to save his life. Free Assange now.
Free Assange.
Our media and corrupt government officials are failing us when it comes to reporting the facts about Julian Assange. They smear him. They lie about him. They omit the truth about him. They torture him. They isolate him. They have set up the conditions that will kill him. Julian Assange pioneered the use of scientific journalism to show everyone how whistleblowers can be protected so that the truth of our real oppression can be known. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Sharing proof of the truth gives people power. Speaking the truth is how we express our power. Julian Assange is a hero. We are all Assange. For years we have been told that we have a free press, but it turns out that it was all a big lie. We know this because as soon as it became clear Julian Assange was freely publishing documents proving government crimes and corruption, the nation states of the US, UK and Sweden collectively conspired to arbitrarily detain and smear him with false accusations. The Australian PM wrongly claimed Julian had committed an illegal act by his publishing. Julian Assange showed the world what a truly free press was capable of, but he needs massive public support. We must all recognise we need a truly free press and that we must be prepared to stand with Julian Assange to secure it. Free Assange now. All journalists must be free to publish what Julian Assange has bravely published so that we can hold governments to account for their corruption. We must stand up for a truly free press. Scott Morrison, why don't you just pick up the phone and be a hero of the free press by standing on the world stage and calling for Julian Assange to be freed immediately? We must all realise that legal due process is being perverted against an innocent journalist to intimidate others who have public interest truth to tell. Free Assange.
Free Assange.
We must stand up for Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange now. Denying someone's freedom of speech is a form of violence. Denying someone's freedom of movement is a form of violence. Killing people slowly by holding them in solitary confinement is a form of violence. Stop the violence against Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange now.
Free Julian Assange.
We must keep standing up for Julian Assange. We must keep fighting the influence of the establishment's media. We must rise above the lies and end government and corporate corruption. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange.
Free, free.
Julian Assange.
Free,
Julian Assange.
free. Mate.
Our mate, Julian Assange. Our mate.
Julian Assange! No extradition! No extradition! Julian Assange! Julian Assange!
I see a lot of people interested in joining us. Please do so every Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. here. Also write to your parliamentarians, to your representatives. There's a lot of pressure now on Mr. Scott Morrison to do something about this matter and secure Julian Assange's release. Members of both sides of politics have said publicly that this is a travesty of justice and that this needs to end. We want Julian Assange released. We want Julian Assange back in Australia with his family, with his partner and his kids. Thank you for listening. We'll be here next Friday.
We just need more people to ring up these politicians and ask for his release, ask for Julian's release, because he's cold, in a cold prison, and he's a journalist. He doesn't deserve to be there. He deserves to be free. And his family and friends don't deserve him to be there either. It's just a travesty.
Hands off Julian Assange!